I just want you to think back to maybe when you were younger. Did you ever play musical chairs? Little show of hands? Yes. Oh, good. The majority of us. So you might remember 2 rows of chairs, yes? And you had to go round them. And you went round them a little nervously because the next thing that was going to happen is that the music was going to stop. Yeah? And do you remember what happened when the music stopped? Yeah, some nodding. There was the humiliating scramble for a chair. Oh my God. Elbows out. You had to really commit, didn't you? You had to really go for it. And if you didn't get the seat. And oh my God, you know what happens then? If you didn't get the seat, there is the walk of shame. The walk of shame. And you had to stand skulking by the wall. I wasn't interested in having the seat anyway. But from over here, you got to watch the rest of the game, and you got to watch everybody else playing. And it occurred to me that life can be a little bit like that, can't it? At some point in your life, usually around in your 30s, you have a look around at the people you know, your peer group, and you realise that everyone got a seat but you. And maybe you feel like that too. You see the chief exec taking up their chair. You see the up-and-coming entrepreneur is now getting settled. The athlete taken to the podium. The actress sitting pretty. Even the geek from school seems to be doing pretty nicely, thank you, and taking up a seat. Bastards. So it seems everyone got a seat but you, and then I started to think, what's that about? And it's not just because they're quicker and they're smarter and they're brighter, although, my God, those things help. It's also about something about the attitude with which they approach the humiliating scramble, whether or not they are willing to fight for their seat. And what makes some people have that attitude and other people be all too willing to give up their potential prize, to give it up to somebody else. And I wonder where that comes from. So I thought back to my own childhood. So when I was little, I really wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. Truth be told, I wanted to be a little star. And in our back room, where probably older people in the audience will identify with this, we had a stereo. It was kind of like the size of the kitchen table. And with that stereo, I would rock it out to Parallel Lines, Bat Out of Hell, Stairway to Heaven. I was word perfect. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, she was probably the star of school plays. Maybe she was grade 8 by age 10. None of that. I did have one line once. I was in Under Milkwood and I was Mrs. Bynon. I called out, "Are you there?" And actually, I should have been talking to myself because the truth was I was hiding. I told no one about these secret desires that I had, these small flames. And it would have been madness, really, to tell anyone, because these small flames were all but extinguished by 2 very ill winds, or at least very stiff breezes. Number one, I had a very, very Catholic upbringing. My school, my church, my mum told me that I should be humble. I should put everyone else before me. So you can imagine the guilt I would have felt if I'd shoved some poor child off their seat just to win musical chairs. Number two, I had a very British upbringing. And I thought about this recently, and I thought, actually, my mum and dad were fighting to break out of a very working class, very wartime background. And they were trying to join the middle classes, trying to fit in. And what I learnt was, don't speak out, don't stand out, do the right thing, say the right thing. Because what I learnt was, we weren't really supposed to be here. That was the message. So what hopes of personal power, what hopes of my dreams of stardom and spotlight? As a sort of illustration of this, again, it was the early 80s, I apologise. Bright green shorts, fluorescent yellow top, going to the school disco. I mean, good God, you couldn't miss me. And I say to my mum, do I look all right in this? My mum says, no one will be looking at you. I know, a bit sad. And the thing was, my mum didn't mean to crush my childhood dreams, yeah? She loved me, and I loved her, and she was generous, and she was funny. But I think what she meant to do was to keep me from the humiliating scramble, from any potential for public humiliation, for public failure. So over time, I kind of learnt to fly under the radar. But this isn't a pity party. I mean, you know, I did well at school, I went to university, I've had some great jobs. And as a brand manager, as a mentor, as a coach, I've helped others shine. I've helped others take up their seat and bring their benefits to the party. And I've even had my own moments in the spotlight. I'm looking across my lovely family over there, my two lovely girls, my lovely husband. When I married my husband, I had my children, I thought, this is my rightful place. I've found my rightful seat. And even career-wise, none of it's glamorous, I'm afraid, but I can remember times when I've held court, when I've convinced 200 hostile union members that mine was the right point of view. I've convinced big businesses that my city is a safe investment for them. And all of that is fine, but in all of those experiences, I always felt like I shouldn't really be here. And I was always too willing to give up my seat and go back over here, skulking by the wall. And I was failing to really commit to anything because of those feelings. But that's okay, isn't it? I mean, we all, to some extent, don't live out our potential. Lots of people live their lives like that. And my life is great. It's great in so many ways. But maybe yours is too. But is there a little part of you that has given up, that has written off some childhood dream, that you left it behind? And I procrastinated. I was always going to do it later because we've always got more time, right? Many of you may have read that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Well, I was lucky enough to read the earlier version, Feel the Fear and Do It Later. And this was all fine. And then last year, my mum died. And as I looked at my mum, I thought, do you know what? My mum still had so much more to give. She was funny and she was opinionated and she was so quick. And in our family, in our kitchen, in our house, she was all of those things. And then I started to think to myself, looking at my daughters, is that what they'll say about me? In our family, in our house, she was all these things. But I've had so many more opportunities than my mum. And so in my grief, even in my grief, and especially in my grief, I applied for a competition that Sarah was running to win a place on a course. I risked failure. I involved myself in the humiliating scramble. And do you know what? I wasn't successful. I didn't win the place. But I paid for the course and I went anyway. And I got to my feet then and since then and tonight for myself, but also for my mum and maybe for all of you who are still over here, waiting by the wall, skulking, maybe watching everybody else playing the game and not getting involved, not committing. For all of us, the truth about musical chairs is that it may feel as if the resources are fixed and diminishing. The truth is that the time is definitely running out. As Joseph Campbell says in his hero's journey, he says that for those who dare, There is always the potential for fiasco, but there is also the potential for moments of bliss. And for the sake of those, I would say, get your back up off the wall. Thank you.